So Brenda's here. Obviously, I'm here, Jane. So that's lovely. Claire, who chose last time with Wild Swans, is here. Then we've got Mel. Debbie is in the background. She's doing all the technical stuff for me so that I don't have to think about it and break Zoom, which is likely. Peter's here, as I say, joining us for the first time. Carol is here and Supriya is here. And then apologies from Mark, who's at his mother's birthday party, and Vivian, who is away visiting her son in Devon. But they've both given me feedback, which I'll read out when we've all had a chance to discuss the book. There's Eileen. We'll admit it, Eileen. And that's, I think we're then there. So give Eileen a minute to come in. There she is.
Eileen has joined the meeting.
Hi, Eileen.
Hello, I've got in at last.
Sorry, was there a technical thing? Yeah, we'll blame Zoom. Always blame Zoom.
Well, I don't know. It kept coming up.
You're in now, and that's the main thing. So we're all here, so that's good. We've got a couple of apologies, but other than that, we're all here, which is fantastic. So we were literally, Eileen, just about to start discussing the book. So I'm going to pick on Brenda and say, Brenda, why did you choose this book?
Because I enjoyed it. I like sort of reading about history, and I thought he brought it to life. You could imagine what was happening, and I just enjoyed it so much that I hoped other people would enjoy it too. We shall see.
Have you read any others that he's written?
Yes, I read the two after it, and I've got the next one. So I've got the fourth one.
So
but,
am I right in thinking it's 4 books with those 2 characters, Cat and...
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's certainly the first 3 are all the same characters, and I think the 4th one is as well, but I haven't started that yet. But,
So is this book the first of the 4 then?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because I think Vivian was the one who said to me that she felt a bit frustrated at the end because the characters were left kind of, it didn't conclude everything, tie everything off nicely. Yeah. And I emailed her back and I said, I wondered if that was because he was already, when he finished this book, was planning the second one. So wanted to leave it open-ended so he could start, which is great, but I do wonder sometimes, is that trying to force the reader to go, well, you want to know what happens? Then you'd better buy the second book.
Also, I think it was good if you really knew London, but probably for most of us, a map would have been help, sort of thing, wouldn't it?
I mean, I suppose
apart from that,
it was interesting to hear. It was interesting to read about the places that, having been there, you know, things like, was it Chelsea he mentioned as a village or something?
Being in the country.
Yes. Yeah, in the countryside, going out to the countryside, visiting
Hampstead.
Chelsea.
Central London now was country, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was thinking, well, I've been to Hampstead and that is not a rural area, I believe.
or Chelsea.
Very interesting to think how different London would have been and how much
smaller. Because it was actually a very small area that was classed, you know, that was counted as central London, it seems.
Yeah, well, it was what we now refer to as the City of London, isn't it? The bit where the Bank of England. That was pretty much it. So it was very small. It's difficult to visualise in your head about what it must have looked like. Mel, what did you think of the book?
I enjoyed it. I felt I wanted to know the characters a bit more, but I've read other books set in a not dissimilar time, so I like finding out about how people lived in that time by reading that kind of book. Like I've also read the Shardlake books by C.J. Sanderson, which are a similar era. But you know, you find out a lot of detail about how people lived, and also, you know, like we were just saying about the difference in the geography of London and that. But I did feel I wanted the characters to come alive a bit more to know a bit more about them as personalities and what they were feeling and thinking.
Yeah, I read a couple of reviews on, I think it was on Amazon, to be honest, and that came up a few times, that the description of London, the description of the historical context of what was going on in terms of, I had never heard of fifth monarchists, is that the right word? I'd never heard of that.
No, I had never
No, I
heard of them.
hadn't.
That was something that was new to me, and all about the Charles II coming back to the throne, and after Oliver Cromwell and stuff. So it was interesting to put that all in context. But yeah, you're not the only person. Quite a few people on the Amazon review said how they felt the characters were a little bit two-dimensional as a result of all the other information. It was almost like the setting became the main thing rather
More
than
important than the characters. Yeah, so I was interested to hear there were more books, because that might develop the characters a bit more.
Yeah. Have you found that, Brenda? Do you think in the subsequent books that the characters become more developed? Do you learn more about them and how they are?
I wouldn't have said it was hugely so. They seem to sort of carry on much the same, I think, to be honest. But they didn't develop them. The story went on obviously in different directions, sort of thing. But I think the general description stayed much the same. I think. Yeah.
Still very interesting.
But yes, I was left at the end wondering, oh, I wonder what happens to her. But a lot of books end in mid-air, don't they, in the end?
Yeah, I was saying to Vivian when I emailed her, I try and train myself to be very patient when it gets to that, because I used to be very frustrated if everything wasn't tied up very nicely at the end with a little bow and everybody lived happily ever
I'm
after.
exactly like you, Jane. I'm still like that to a certain extent.
Yeah, so now I have to.
Then it doesn't feel true like life, does it? If you
No, I know that, Brenda, but I still like things to be nice and tidy, because in real life nothing's tidy. So when I'm reading fiction, it's nice to have it tidy. But I am trying to be more patient with stuff and go, well, that's how the author wanted it, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
I feel this time it was left. Yeah, it was like ...
Yeah, because it was one of four sort of thing. Yes.
Yeah, and I would assume that he already had at least number 2 and 3 possibly planned.
Yeah.
And an interesting theme and part of history to write those kind of books. I thought it was really interesting because I'm not a big crime reader. It's not my preferred genre, but I thought it was very interesting that you heard both sides of it, in terms of the characters, whereas normally when you've got like a modern day murder mystery crime thing, it's very much from the police point of view trying to solve the crime, whereas this was, it was all interwoven. You got the two voices and everything was mixed up much more, so you kind of got both sides of the story, because for a long time Kat was definitely probably on the wrong side of the law, shall we say, and certainly when it came to the fiance being on her with the heat and dying, definitely she was the guilty party. I thought it was interesting to read from her point of view, because you don't often get that with crime writing, do you? You don't find out who the murderer is until the end.
No.
Whereas to actually have the murder described quite early on in the book was quite interesting.
Yeah, she was quite free with the knife, wasn't she?
She was quite handy with it, yes. And I did like the fact that it was a female protagonist, especially in the era, because it's quite nice to have girls doing stuff, really. So, Claire, what did you? Sorry, Mel, go on.
I was interested to learn about Alsatia. I had no idea. I've never heard that before. That area of London called Alsatia, and how that also is named after a place by the French-German border, because of course we have the Alsatian dog, which is a German Shepherd, and this Alsatia having been a kind of place in itself. I mean, what was it? Did it have its own laws, or it was a bit of an independent place, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was a place where people who had fallen short of the law, you know, and lived beneath the law, all congregated, so that the laws were a bit loose and free there, and people nobody went there because it was a place where the law didn't apply. So I'd not realised there was a place called Alsatia in London. I'd heard of Alsatia. I thought it was in Germany, to be honest. And because
it might be the French-German border, but I don't know on which side.
But I didn't know that there was a place here, which I assume is right. I mean, he was.
We'll have to find out what it's called now.
Yeah,
maybe it's changed the name.
There isn't now. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a place in France called Alsace, isn't there? And I don't know if that's connected with it at all.
Alsace-Lorraine.
I'm going to do a bit of. I'm going to do Wikipedia.
Is that near the German, by the German border?
I will find out about Alsatia in London, Alsatia in Germany or France, wherever it is, and the Alsace. And I will let you all know. We will all be educated on that. Possibly not by the end of today, but next week I will email around. So I will do my research. Lovely. Claire, what did you think of the book?
Well, to begin with, I thought I'm not going to enjoy this book. And then I started really getting more into it. And I have lived in London for years before, I don't now, but, and it was interesting to me to find that was, you know, Scotland Yard. I thought that was quite new. And different things kept coming up. And I thought, God, was that there then? And also, I've never heard of the Alsatia bit at all. There were quite a lot of things I hadn't heard of. I'd never heard of King Jesus. That was a new one on me. And I'd read Pepys's diaries, which were written at the same time. It sounded a very dangerous place, London, in those days. You've got to watch what you said. Mind you can do that now a bit. But, you know, it seemed quite a dangerous place to be living. But it never came across with Pepys particularly. And Shard Lake's book didn't come on that particular side either, really. So in the end, I really, from not wanting to read it and think, oh God, I don't think I want to bother with this, I got quite into it. I thought she was a bit too handy with a knife, to be honest. I know,
Yes, she definitely got into it, didn't she, with the knife? Yeah.
She seemed to use it at the drop of her hat. But on the whole, I quite enjoyed it. And I may have a look at the follow-on. I'll see what happens, you know, I'll read up on what happens next before I get it. But it was an interesting read for me.
Did you follow the directions, where the road directions and things like that? Were you quite happy with all of those?
It was fascinating. I used to live in Hampstead, and there's nothing villagey about it now, although they do like to call the Hampstead village.
Yeah.
And if you get a house in Hampstead village, you're going to be paying at least 100,000 more than if you're not in the village. I was not in the village, I have to say. But I wished all the time I was. But
I also, sorry to come, I also thought it was how, you know, we're thinking about how being handy with the knife. I mean, a lot of this originated with the fact that she was being forced to marry this rather revolting.
Yes. Yeah.
And also, of course, about the assault, you know, the rape.
Yeah, the rape. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a very very different world for women, wasn't it? As well?
Yeah.
Yes, it was. But you're saying that, but you know, women are still.
Oh yeah.
Fighting their corner a bit, even all those years later, hundreds of years later. Not to the same extent. I mean, in Victorian times, your money went to your husband, didn't it? Before they stopped that. Women have always had to fight their corner. She certainly fought hers.
Yeah,
did physically, yes.
Yeah.
What I found also interesting, and it reminded me of a book I read years ago by Primo Levi. Now, he wrote two books. One was If This Is a Man, which was about his internment in Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And then there was, I can't remember if it's called The Long Journey Home or The Long Road Home, but the second book is about his journey from Auschwitz back to northern Italy, where he'd come from. And until I'd read that book, it had never occurred to me, you study history at school and everything, and you think, well, yes, there was the Second World War and there was the persecution of the Jews, and the Allies turned up and they liberated all the camps, and everybody went home and had a cup of tea and it was all tidy. Of course, it never occurred to me until I read that book that there was no infrastructure. So actually getting home took him 2 years.
Really? I haven't read that.
No, it's fascinating just how, because there were no trains, there was no roads, they had all been blown up. There was no way of physically moving anywhere in Europe.
Right.
And this reminded me of that in terms of, yes, I all know about the Great Fire of London. It's well documented, it's been written about many times. And then you think, but then they had to rebuild the whole of the city. Yes. And I've never even thought about how huge a task that would have been. And I found that really interesting to listen to read about, I know it's fictionalized, but about Wren and the cathedral and the plans for building new London kind of thing. I found that really interesting. And again, it made me think about, you know about the big historical events, but it's the aftermath as well.
And how it affected people in small ways, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't just happen on one day and then was over.
No. And that's, I think, in my nice, tidy, like a happy ending bit, I think that's how we thought. World War II finished, and then everybody...
Fire of London moved on, sort of thing.
Yeah, the Fire of London blew itself out and everybody got on with their lives. You don't think about how long afterwards a big impact like that would have. So that was really interesting for me to think about, how long that would have taken to get London anywhere near back to how it had been, and then to build on from there.
Yes,
Peter, sorry, go on, Brenda.
The smell of smoke and all the rest of it, sort of thing, hanging over everywhere, and the imagination of that was quite something.
Yeah,
as you say, the Fire of London was a line in the textbook, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah,
1666 done.
Yeah. And I would imagine they didn't know how many people were actually killed in it, because I've always understood that a lot of people escaped, but they didn't, because people would be so poor they weren't going to bother counting every child, every house that burned down with the people in it.
But so many people would have been displaced and homeless.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was one part where it was described, people were living in, what had been broken down, burnt out shells, and living in the rubble of it and just finding somewhere to shelter. Again, had never occurred to me that that's how people would have had to survive.
Only carrying what they could take.
Yeah. Thank goodness they were able to get out. Those that could get out to lovely rural Hampstead, because and have a nice bit of country fresh air. Peter, what did you think?
I enjoyed the book, actually, and I really agreeing with what has been said so far in the group. I learned a lot about the history of that time in London and the Great Fire. And also I kind of agree with the end, really. I was because we listened to it together. My wife and I sort of each night would listen to an hour or two, and when it got to the end, and and then it said, and that is that is the conclusion of. And we kind of thought, oh, right. Oh, okay. And actually, I don't know if maybe the reader, the chap who narrated it, who on the whole I thought was excellent, really enjoyed his reading of it. But maybe the way he read it as well, he just kind of got to the end of a sentence and you almost didn't know it was the end of the chapter or the book or anything. It just was like, oh, that's that kind of thing. But maybe that's intentional as well. The round about the middle, I started to get a little bit confused with all the different names. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else did, if it was just me.
No, it wasn't just you.
I did too.
And then it kind of came together again, didn't it? As more things happened with the characters and as kind of reduced the number of characters one by one. So, that made it
quite grateful.
Yeah. So, Do you know, actually, most of the things that have been said, I'm thinking, the thing about the fifth monarchist, didn't know anything about that. So I looked on Wikipedia about that and learned all about that. And then the King Jesus and all of that was interesting. And also it's kind of to do with like the persecution of the Catholics, isn't it? Or it's a little bit after that, but like if you're a Catholic, you were kind of like you kind of had to keep your religion to yourself. You didn't really show it off much. Don't really know much about the Civil War. There's a big gap there in my history, which, I do need to learn more about. But I go into London occasionally now and then and have a bit of a wander around and look. And I've learned there's these sort of collection of, I think they call them the Wren churches that he designed and built after the Great Fire. So there's quite a few of those around central London, and they're all interesting because they're actually, I guess, they're quite plain. They're not sort of very, is it Baroque? I don't know, but they're not that. They're quite plain. I guess they were built in a hurry with limited materials. So it's interesting to sort of see those, and I had those in mind while I was listening to the book. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed it and I learned a lot from it. Kind of agree that we didn't learn too much about the people. I wasn't sure if Kat's was going to be in future books actually, or if it was going to be his story. Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah.
I'm just going to say though, if he had written all of them and put them into one book, you'd have had another big book like the first one we had when we started. You could have had it that way.
Sorry.
Claire, you've got to stop apologising because we all loved it. So you've got to stop doing that.
Okay.
But I do think, I think a lot of us have picking up your point, Brenda, I think a lot of us would be interested on reading further books of his because they were,
At least you get the chance to have your appetite whetted or not.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to look up, that's another thing on Wikipedia, and then Wren churches. I'm adding that to my list. There we go, right. Carol, you're very quiet. What did you think of it?
I did enjoy it. It's my sort of book. I love books from that time. I did get a bit lost with some of the names. I kept thinking, now which one is he? But it does sort of come together at the end. And I was fascinated because I was brought up in Essex, and I was amazed at the length of time it took him to travel. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it made me want to sort of look up a bit more of the history of the time, and I'm a bit of a history fanatic. I did. I found it very interesting, and I'd quite like to read the next book.
Who mentioned it? Was it Vivian mentioned? No, hang on, where's my bit of paper? She mentioned that she found, was it here or did I read it somewhere else? She said she found it a bit frustrating at times that you had the two voices. So you got a bit of Kat's story and then you got a bit of, is it James? Was that his name? The other guy?
Yes, James, yes.
Yeah. But one was written in the first person and one was
That's
written
right.
Yes.
She said
that was unusual, wasn't it?
It was very unusual and it didn't bother me, if I'm honest, but I read somewhere, it was her or someone else, that they found it a bit disjointed because you were going from one chapter where it was, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then you turned it the next chapter and it was, he went here, he said this, and they found that just a little bit jarring. And I don't know if other people had noticed it and if it caused them a problem.
Noticed it, but no problem.
No, I mean, it's an interesting style, isn't it? Because people either tend to write, in the first person or in the third, but mixing up is something a bit different. It was just interesting. I hadn't even noticed, to be honest, as I read it. It was only when I read the reviews afterwards. I went, oh yeah, never noticed that. So Priya, what did you think?
Yes, I also enjoyed the book. I like anything set in the Stuart era or Tudor period. I tend to read a lot of Philippa Gregory and Mary Hooper.
Oh yeah.
So I hadn't read this author before. yes, but I didn't like the characters. I didn't feel they were likable. Yes, they were a bit two-dimensional. I was annoyed with Kat because I wish she had finished off that job when she poked her cousin in the eye and
Well,
caused a lot of problems because he was alive. I thought James could develop into a more interesting character, but it didn't really happen. Most books I read, I always tend to like a few characters and I root for them, and you know, it's nice to like somebody in a story. But this one, no, I didn't like anyone, but the book as a whole was fine. It was interesting.
I quite liked it, but Jem, the servant at the beginning, but he didn't last very long. So.
No, unfortunately, no.
So I was rooting for him, but then I kind of
yes,
was scuppered after about chapter 3.
It was quite harrowing, the description of the violence and everything. And there was no warning at the beginning of the book, that like there are with some books.
No, that's true.
About the violence. Not that it bothered me particularly, but it was quite harrowing.
There were some pretty strong descriptions, weren't there? And as Claire said, you know, it was clearly not a safe place to go for women, but also for men. You know, the descriptions of walking and keeping your back to the wall and trying not to get pickpocketed.
And also what they could get away with the servants, what they could do to them and not be charged with murder. And also I couldn't work out, is it Aunt Olivia?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought she was bad at first and then she seems to be good. I don't quite know. Even the author, does he know what he wants her to be?
That's interesting. I quite liked that because, like you, I went, oh, she's a baddie, and then oh no, maybe she's got a good heart, and oh no, she's just a bit fickle. So I did, go from one extreme to the other. But then, you know, I think, isn't that humans?
People are like that. Yes.
Yeah.
People are like that. None
But
of us
also,
are.
I think it was a bit of a sign of the times that it was quite hard to be a pretty thoroughly good person, because there's such a lot of unruly stuff to navigate in the world around you, that you know, it would be hard to survive as such.
I was going to say survival was the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a bit like, you know, not that I've read much of, but the Tudor history stuff, you know, it was all very much about where your alliances were. You know, you had to be in with the right people to protect yourself, because if
be
you
careful what you said.
So you had to kind of play a game of
Trying hard not to make enemies type of thing, isn't it?
Yes, or know which people to make enemies of, and which people to make friends of, because they were the stronger ones. So, but does Aunt Olivia feature in any of the other books, Brenda?
Yes. She comes to life further.
Right. Okay, so that's another reason to read more of the books. Yeah, cool. Eileen, what did you think?
Well, I don't like to say, but I couldn't get on with it.
No, I think that's great. I think it's great that
I was all excited to start it because I thought, oh, that's going to be really great. I don't know, after listening to everybody else, I don't know if I listened to it in too small a chunks or whether I was in the wrong mood, but it seemed to be lots and lots of description, not a lot of action to me. Hearing other people talk, I can remember about King Jesus, and I can remember the fellow that got I think it was a knife in his eye.
Yeah,
but
that was cousin. Yeah.
More than anything, was a bloke with his thumbs tied together in St. Paul's. They seem to go backwards and forwards to St. Paul's, and I couldn't work out why. Having listened to everybody else, I don't know that perhaps I read it in too small a chunks.
I think you can definitely be in the wrong mood for a book.
I wondered if that was it. Hearing you all, I think I might well try it again.
Because I've found that in the past sometimes, and you just can't get on with a book because it isn't, your mood isn't right for it. Isn't it?
Well, I was surprised how everybody loved it so much because I found it quite difficult. And as I said,
I did it first, Eileen, to be honest. I think because I was juggling, you know, work, life, etc. I was, like you say, reading it in small chunks and then picking up and going, oh, I can't remember who this person is and I can't remember what happened.
Yeah.
But once I had the week off and was able to spend a bit more time getting into it, then it all started to, like, the jigsaw pieces started to come together in my head. So I do get what you mean. It was, and we've all mentioned the fact that there were a lot of characters who flitted in and out and all had similar names, and I got very confused with them.
I just want two smaller chunks. If I sat down and listened to more, I'd have been more in it. But listening to what everybody says, I'm going to have another go at it.
There we are.
I think.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
I think one of the problems when you listen to a book, in the old days when I could read a book, I could flip back a few pages to check on who somebody was. But when you're listening, you don't have that facility.
If you can still rewind, you can go wherever you like, depending on what you're listening on.
Well, I'm listening on an iPad.
You can still go backwards.
I can go backwards, but it's not as easy as just flipping a few pages.
Yeah, I agree.
But you can go back if you go to the chapters.
Yes.
You can go back chapter. I always keep I always keep a notebook, and I always put a potted history of the main characters so that
that's
I go back to so I can go, so I can look it up and think, well, because the thing that I do that for is because I hate it in a murder one when you find out at the end of the book somebody murdered them, but they didn't appear since chapter 2, sort of thing, or something like that. So I always
also found that since I've been listening rather than reading, there are different types of books I like. Books that I've read and or authors I've read and then had in audio, I haven't liked so much, or I've liked people more. It seems to be a different way of listening or reading that perhaps helps the book. I don't know, but I have noticed that books that I could read, authors I could read, I find more difficult listening to sometimes.
The reader does make a huge difference.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting that there are authors that don't convert to Audible or audio reading.
A lot depends on the reader as well, I think.
The readers do vary enormously.
Yes, I had one the day that had Rulenska. Oh, what's her name?
Rulenska
reading it, and it was absolutely brilliant because it was all in
character,
but it was not only was it in character, it was sort of up and down, and as people said things, whereas sometimes they're not, if it's not by somebody that's
so some of the better ones that are read by actors and actresses are fantastically good, aren't they? But sometimes some of the readers, you can hear them drawing breath, and you can hear them doing also, you can practically hear them turning the pages over. And it spoils it completely.
The best one I heard recently was I read David Copperfield, and the reader was Nigel Carrington, and he was absolutely amazing. He did all the voices for all the different characters, and his reading was excellent. I couldn't put the book down.
That's
doing that really helps with following who's who, doesn't it? Having the different voices for different characters. When I watch TV, like a TV drama with my husband, say, because I don't bother watching them on my own because I won't know what's going on, but quite often the voices aren't distinct enough. And I'm constantly saying, oh, who was that then? And whereas if you can see the faces, everyone's faces is quite different. So, it's much easier to follow who's who. So with the reading of the books, if you have quite different voices for each character, it really does help bring them to life.
Have you got audio description on your television?
Well, it's of course audio description. We were looking into it recently, and what it says is that it's the BBC aims for about 20%, but most producers, it's only about 10% of programs that have audio description, and it very much depends on whether the producers of the program have produced audio description at the time of making it. So, I mean, it's not.
Well, I've personally found that quite a lot of them are. I even watched the film Titanic, and that had audio description.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think we've still got a bit more finding out too, but my husband tends to record like series of drama, and we seem to get it less on recorded stuff than on live TV. So I don't quite know how that works or not.
No, I don't know. And I know a lot of BBC, well, EastEnders, for example, if you haven't got it on HD, you don't get the audio description on it.
Yeah. I get the audio description on Coronation Street.
Sorry?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
It makes a great difference.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And it's not really intrusive either, is it?
No. And you can also get it on wildlife programs and discovery programs. I've had it on.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good. So overall, I think we all enjoyed the book. I think we can summarise and say, yes, that was a good book. That was a good choice. Well done, Brenda. Just to complete it all, Mark said he really enjoyed the book and will be looking for copies, looking to read books further in the series, and he's looking forward to seeing us all next month. And then Vivian, she emailed this morning, she said, I thoroughly enjoyed the way the story unravelled. The author's knowledge of 17th century London, the way people lived, and even the details of the streets was very impressive and added to my enjoyment immensely. London in that era was almost like another character or presence in the book, which I thought was a really interesting way of describing it. Like you said, a couple of you said, I didn't particularly warm to the two main characters, but the author's ability to spin a page turner more than made up for that. One query, did others find that the ending where James and Kat were left in limbo a bit odd? I think we can all say yes, we did. But a good choice, thank you, from Vivian. So Eileen, we've inspired Eileen to give it another go. So that's
just give me the name of the author again, because I haven't got it.
Oh, I can't remember. Brenda, what's the name of the author?
Andrew Taylor.
Andrew Taylor.
Andrew Taylor. Brilliant. And I'm going to look up now. It was the Shard. The Shard Lake books?
Yeah, it's C.J. Sansom, which I think is S-A-N-S-U-M.
Okay.
Sansom, I think.
Okay.
And Shard Lake is the main character who it tells it from Shard Lake's first person. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good. And Supriya, you mentioned a couple of authors. One was Philippa Gregory.
Philippa Gregory, yes. The other one is Mary Hooper.
Mary Hooper.
And she mainly writes about Charles II period.
Mary what?
Hooper. I think it's H-O-O-P-E-R. I'm not sure.
H-O-O.
I'm not sure.
I will do some more Wikipediaing and Googling, and I will send a list of book titles round with those.
Oh, thank you.
Which I can't remember who said they'd read Pepys's diary.
I had.
Claire, is it worth it?
I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
Yes, I've read some. I enjoyed
Have
it.
you?
Yeah, I mean, he's such a character. Well, he is a character. But he doesn't mention any of the things that came into the book. Like, he doesn't seem to have a problem with them. I mean, he's got to duck and dive because he's got a very good job. He's in the, the top of the naval thing. But he seems to manage very well. He gets away from he watches the fire of London. He gets all his stuff out. He's really a bit of a charmed life, except his wife dies very young, which is sad. And he doesn't remarry, he doesn't have children. But I mean, he's one for the ladies, that's for sure.
There we go. Well, I shall add it to my to be read list. Which is quite a long list, to be fair, but I will add it to it. longer by the week rather than
Yeah.
shorter, but there we go. So do we want to discuss our next book? And I believe, Eileen, we gave you the short straw last time and it was your choice.
The book I picked is The Thread by Victoria Hislop.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
I've probably read it.
What is it called?
The
The
Thread.
Thread.
The
Oh,
Thread.
yes, I've read it. Yeah. Yeah. I
I
like all her books. They're nice. They're
I've
good.
read a couple of hers. I've not read that one, but I've read a couple, and yeah, they are good. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
Do we know anything more about it, Eileen? What's the theme of it?
a long time ago, but
Sorry.
I think it's the Muslims and the Catholics, or two religions, let's say, were living happily together, and then they decided they were going to split them up into different areas.
Oh,
And it was, I'm trying to remember it, this quite a long time ago I read, they split them up into different areas, and it tells you what happened, where it was. The Thread is actually a young girl who's doing sewing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember any more about it.
Is it in Greece again? Because a lot of hers are in Greece.
yeah. Hang on, I've just found it on my phone. Here, I will read it to you. The enthralling novel by Victoria Hislop, The Million. It is Thessaloniki in 1917, as Dimitri Komnenos is born. A devastating fire, there's a theme, sweeps through the thriving Greek city where Christians, Jews, and Muslims live side by side. 5 years later, Katerina Sarafoglu's home in Asia Minor is destroyed by the Turkish army. Losing her mother in the chaos, she flees across the sea to an unknown destination in Greece. Soon her life will become entwined with Dimitri's and with the story of the city itself as war, fear, persecution begin to divide its people. Thessaloniki, 2007, a young Anglo-Greek hears his grandparents' life story for the first time and realizes he has a decision to make. For many decades, they have looked after the memories and treasures of the people who were forced to leave. Should he become their next custodian and make the city his home? Well, that sounds good.
Sounds good, yes.
Yeah.
I lived in Greece for 6 years, and one of my husband's aunts had been thrown out of Smyrna, which was then in Turkey. And the story she told me about the way they had to leave Smyrna were horrendous. So that'll be very good about that.
Another interesting time in history that didn't know much about.
Well,
So,
it was in the 20s when they were thrown out of places.
yeah.
And I'm reading hers at the moment that is about the Second World War, which I didn't actually realise the Germans got into Greece. And this one's quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you remember the name of that one?
No.
Okay. I'll have a look, see if I can find the title and email it around. Sounds really good. I think that sounds a really good one. So now we did say in terms of dates that we would meet the first Friday of each month. Now the first Friday of July is the 2nd. That's 3 weeks today. Do we all think we can get through a Victoria Hislop book in 3 weeks?
No.
Oh, we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the positive attitudes team.
I can't be there. Sorry, I'm away. Provided we don't go into serious lockdown. I'm away. Sorry. I'll read it then and let you know.
Okay.
What date did you say?
The 2nd of July.
I think I'm going to be away as well.
Is that you, Eileen? Are you going to be away?
I'm going away that day, but probably.
Oh. Well, the other option is we can put it back a week.
Right.
Till the 9th. I mean, the danger is we're getting into summer and people will have other commitments.
I'll be away that week.
Oh, dear.
So what do we want to do? I mean, I'm just conscious, Eileen, you've chosen the book and it would be nice if you were here to then hear what people think about it. And if you're definitely not around on the 2nd.
I'm not.
Is it sensible to postpone it to the 9th?
Well, it's what everybody else wants to do. I mean, I don't mind. The 9th is all right with me, but.
Well, it's all right with me.
Okay
Yes.
with
Yeah,
that?
I can do the
Let's
9th.
do that then. Yeah.
Mel, would you be terribly offended if we...
No, I'll be
All right,
fine.
well, only because it's
And
Eileen's
if,
book.
if it's a rainy day in Cornwall, I can always tune in, can't I?
Make us very jealous by showing us the scenery, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go for the 9th then, and I'll set it up for that. But if things change, we can discuss through email. So brilliant. So we will be reviewing the thread by Victoria Hislop on the 9th of July. And I'll set up a Zoom link and send that around to you nearer the time, so that's okay. And then we need to decide whose book we then read after the 9th of July, which is where I then go, Debbie, are you there with your clever technical thing, with your name selecting?
Oh, yes.
I am here and I'm just having a look because I'm on a different laptop today, so I'm hoping that I can find it in this. Oh yeah, I think I might have found it. Let me see. Can you see this?
Debbie Ross has started screen share. Alert.
Yes.
Viewing Debbie
Oh,
Ross.
look at that.
Okay.
Yes.
So are we ready? I'm going to hit the button.
Exciting.
Supriya.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Supriya, no pressure, but you now have to choose the book that we read up from the 9th of July.
Recorded. Continuing to be in the
My problem is I want so many books. I don't know
Yeah.
which one to choose.
Yeah, I know, it's always hard, isn't it? And my advice would be, don't pick one that you really love in case nobody else loves it, because then it's really upsetting. So choose one you like, but wouldn't be offended if people didn't like it. That's
Okay.
my advice.
meeting.
Bitter
Jane.
experience.
Or one you'd like to read, of course.
Or one that's on the,
Oh, yes.
Um,
That's a good idea.
Thinking ahead, we were talking about the holiday season coming up. Do you think, Jane, that we'll have a meeting in August, or would we skip that month and go to September for the next meeting?
That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Does
Because-
August make any difference to any of us?
No,
Not
no,
really.
not going anywhere.
Really?
Okay.
I might
In my other
actually
book group,
be.
we decided to go ahead with August. It was just last night, actually. We decided to go ahead with August because, people are much more at home this year, and
Yes.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem such a, And some of us will be away in July and some in September probably, and we might.
I have to admit, I might be away the first week in August. I haven't actually mentioned it to Debbie yet, whether I can take that week off, but
I'm sure.
What do you think? Shall I let her have the annual leave, guys?
please. But we can have a look and see how people are feeling about that when we meet
Yeah.
in July, and then maybe take it from there. So, but it's a good point, Peter, because people do get busy in July, August, don't they? And then it tends to settle down again, certainly by October when the nights are drawing in. But as you say, Mel, people aren't really going anywhere, are there? There's nowhere to go at the moment. So
Yeah, it's true.
Only Devon and Cornwall,
Devon and Cornwall, or the Lake District.
Yorkshire.
I've got to
Yorkshire is nice.
Yorkshire, yes.
West Wales, I can thoroughly recommend.
I'm going to say goodbye quickly because I'm popping out in a minute. So I've got someone coming to pick me up. We're going to a doggy playground. It's got all kind of activities in it for dogs, which
Where's
I'm
that?
for. Sorry?
Where's that?
It's in Egham because this friend used to live up that way, and she's just moved down nearer to me. But
Do you
we're
know
going.
what it's called? I would love to take my dog there.
It's called Dogs and Dandelions, and it's in Egham. I'll tell you how it is, Supriya.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Send me an email. I know, go through Jane if you haven't got mine. You probably haven't got mine, but because you're not far from me, are you? So because I won't be at the next group to tell you. So
Of course.
I'll email you if you like.
Brilliant. Okay, well, have fun then, Mel. I hope it looks. I hope it's fun. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right, take care.
Bye.
End meeting or leave meeting. Tap.
So,
Cancel button. Tap. Leave meeting button.
Oh, there we go. So I think that's it really. So we've got our next book. We know who's choosing after that. We've got another date. We've enjoyed this book. I've got another long list of books and research things to find out about. So it's all brilliant, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. But I think we're probably done, are we? Unless anybody's got anything else to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jane, and thanks,
Thank you.
Brenda, for the recommendation.
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, no, it was really, and honestly,
It's lovely to talk about it all, isn't it?
Yes.
I love talking about books. So an excuse to do it in work time is great. But they won't give me the time off to read the books. That's the only thing. I have to do that in my own time.
Oh.
I'll keep trying. But it's been lovely to chat to you all. Yeah. So I will see you all on the 9th of July. Happy reading and enjoy the sunshine in the meantime. So yeah, take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
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 Bye. There we are. Where are we?